Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I am so excited to introduce you today to David Britz. David is the founder of DD Project Wines and the DD Entrepreneurial Foundation. The DD Project was started in honor of his late mother, Diane Rizzo, who also happens to be the co-founder of the Capriotti's sandwich franchise. All of the proceeds from DD Project Wines go towards the foundation's work of supporting and developing female-owned businesses, and they do this through grants and educational opportunities. Pretty amazing, right? You literally get to buy wine and do good. So I'm very excited to talk to David about this. Beyond being the founder of the DD Project, David is also an accomplished entertainment executive and the founder and president of Works Entertainment. So today we're going to talk about how David found his love for wine and started the DD Project. We'll talk about the inspiration behind them and, of course, the delicious wines that are part of the DD Project label. We'll cover how they choose the wines that they make, what winemakers they work with. It's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hello, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Well, thank you for joining and especially for getting this going so quick. So do you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. How far are we going back here, Haley?
As far back as you want. The focus of this podcast, obviously, we do care about wine and everything related to it. And kind of like what is your story and how you got into wine is kind of how I like to get into this. To be fair, that is the second question. So feel free to give a little basis and then we'll dive deep into your how you got into wine.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a person that's driven by passion. And as I was growing up, music was definitely my passion. And I grew up in Delaware on the East Coast, and no one who I grew up with was involved in the music industry in any way. So I figured I was destined to move to New York or LA, and I chose the warm weather. So moved to Los Angeles right after I graduated school, and actually 2 weeks to the day after I graduated.
Wow.
And started working here and, building a career. And that's now 23 years to the day almost that I moved here to Southern California. So I've been working in entertainment industry for, like I said, 23 years. And through my work in entertainment, we started producing music festivals in Napa Valley. And working in Napa Valley, that was my introduction to wine. And I'm sure people who listen to your podcast know that once you get the bug, you get the bug. And I got the bug.
Yes, no, I totally feel that. There's always, and this is why I always love to ask that question of like, how did you discover your love for wine? Because more often than not, it's not necessarily that the family's into it. It's not necessarily like it started young. It's always like, well, I was doing this and then I discovered this and I kind of couldn't, and I couldn't stop thinking about the wine. So can you dive a little deeper into, how did you discover your love for wine?
So, wine had been around. I mean, I'm Italian, and, wine was always a part of, family gatherings and whatnot. My mom, who we'll talk about a little bit later, was a big fan of Pinot Grigio. So, I'd always kind of seen Pinot Grigio around. And then again, as I started going to Napa Valley and really drinking good wine, so I was like, wow, this is much different than, no offense to if this is what you love, like the Trader Joe $2, like
Yes.
this is a completely different animal.
Yes.
And then you get into, the how and why behind the making of wine and, what incredible work these winemakers do and, the time and the effort that goes into it. And it's art. It's similar to what I do in music. It's people creating things and somebody, creates a 50 case run of Cabernet. That's it. You know, there is going to be nothing that is ever going to drink or be like that artisan 50 case lot of wine ever again. And, I find beauty in that. So I got into that. So I started nerding out about that aspect of it. And then just getting into it and just enjoying pairings and, just getting deep in the weeds. And then, during COVID, I went down the W set path and, got up to level 2. I just didn't have time to take level 3, but at some point I will. Like I said, I caught the bug.
Yeah, I know that feeling. My story is very similar in that you learn about it or you experience it in some way. Mine was in Willamette Valley of Oregon. And then you taste it and you're like, wow, this is an experience. This is like you said, art and so wonderful. And then you start learning and you just you keep wanting to learn more. And that's what's so cool about wine. You can never stop learning about wine because there's so much to learn about it.
Yeah, you can never know everything, and that's
Yeah.
also the beauty of it is the constant discovery, which honestly I think we should be about everything, and you should constantly be discovering and learning about life in general. So I think wine, is a reflection of that, and I really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yes, I totally agree. I've always told people, I'm like, if anybody tells you they know everything about wine, they're lying. They're wrong. It's impossible.
Hmm. It's 100% true.
Just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, what are you waiting for? I would love for you to join. When you do, you'll get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, and so much more. Now, let's get back to the show. Well, let's talk about then the DD project. Can you tell us, folks who are listening had heard my little intro about it, but I want you to tell us a little bit about what it is and what inspired you to create it.
Sure. So I'll talk about the inspiration first, and then we can talk a little bit about, what we do and how we do it. So my mom, who I was talking about earlier, was somebody who was into wine. So again, that was probably, if I think, probably my earliest introduction to wine. And unfortunately, she tragically passed in 2019. And in the midst of grief, and as I was writing her eulogy, I wrote that I was going to do something in her honor and as a way to keep her spirit alive and to support other female entrepreneurs like her. So my mom and my two cousins started the Capriati sandwich chain. And, that was at a time when, females running businesses at that level was, they were definitely in the minority. So I always took great pride in what she did and how she did it. And, I think that she never got the credit or never took the credit that she really deserved in doing what she did. So part of my mission here was one to celebrate her memory, but also celebrate her accomplishments as well. And it's, selfishly a way for me to keep talking about her. And, every time I see somebody post something on Instagram where they're drinking our wine or they're celebrating a holiday with their family and our wine's on the table, it's like, oh man, like we're really doing it. And she's still there. So
Yeah.
that was the reasoning for it. And then, it's the social good aspect of it. I was like, listen, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it and we're going to donate 100% of the proceeds. So we don't make a dollar on it. Every single dollar that we make, we donate back. We do a grant system where we give grants to female entrepreneurs. They apply, we give them grants, and they use it for buying equipment, paying rent, doing whatever it is that they need to do to keep their businesses afloat. So we're boots on the ground, giving real support to businesses that need it.
Yeah. I think that's so special. There's so many things that I'm thinking about as you're telling me this. I mean, first, I'm thinking about what a special relationship between you and your mom for you to, one, want to recognize her achievements and make sure that they're shouted out. Because you're right. I'm sure at a lot, especially at that time, one, there weren't a lot of female entrepreneurs, and then they also probably weren't encouraged to like shout out about it and be like, I'm doing this right now. Like, look at the amazing things I'm doing. And I love that you're wanting to shout out her accomplishments. And then, yes, so special to like, it's, I don't think selfish is quite the right word when you said that, but because it's absolutely not selfish, everything else that is surrounding it, but so special that, like you said, you get to talk about her so much and you get to continue sharing her story and she continues to provide meaning, long beyond her passing. And I think that's so, so special. And so did you come up with right away that you wanted it to be like wine sales that funded the foundation, or how did that kind of come to be?
Yeah, that was sort of the thing, because again, at that point it was probably 10 years in Napa, and I had developed these wonderful relationships with, wineries and winemakers and whatnot. And, as I was thinking about, okay, well, I don't want to go around and just ask people for money. I feel uncomfortable doing that. Hey, donate to my nonprofit. That's not what I wanted to do. I was like, well, let me create a thing that will fund the nonprofit. So I don't have to go around hat in hand asking people for things, because that's not what I wanted to do. Now I can ask people to drink good wine and say, hey, buy this. That's to me is much easier than, asking people for money. So I chose that path. And, as I got into it, I was like, all right, well, first wine, what are we going to do? And then it had to be a Pinot Grigio.
Of course.
So, I started having conversations. I started trying a bunch of Pinot Grigios, and I finally found one in Santa Barbara that I was like, this is the one. And we made the first Pinot Grigio that would have been 20. And I was like, this is it. And honestly, we just made a Pinot Grigio again this year. I think it's going to come on the website next week, but we haven't made it since then because I couldn't get the right wine. So, either we will buy bulk from winemakers that are kind enough to give me my wine, or we'll ferment, depending on what the situation is. And, we kind of take liberty to do either or. And I couldn't get what I wanted. And I was like, I'm not going to make anything that is subpar, especially because it's her wine.
Yeah,
Like,
no, that's the most important one. She'd come back from her grave and haunt you if you're like not giving out the good Pinot Grigio.
yeah. And to be fair, especially if any of my family listens to this, my mom wasn't a connoisseur. So she was very much like, is it Pinot Grigio? Is it decent? I will drink it.
Sure.
But, for me, it's important that it really stands up. And
Yeah.
it really does. I'd put our Pinot Grigio pretty much against anything. And that's sort of my kind of thought process with any of our wines is that, if I wouldn't love them, I don't want to
Yeah.
bottle. So,
Right.
I've had conversations with, our distributors and other folks. They're like, can you just make something that's less expensive and not expensive versus quality? And I'm sure you've had this argument here. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just like, I will not sacrifice the quality of the wine to make something that's cheap.
Right. Well, and because like the meaning, like you're like, it's not only that I'm trying to raise money. Like
Yeah.
going back to like the reason you even decided to, fund a foundation via wine, it was like, I want people to buy and enjoy good wine and then have it attached to being able to do this good thing. And it's not that you're just buying something, like I'm thinking about like when I'm like, oh, when the Girl Scouts come by, but I love the Girl Scout cookies. So that's not a good example. But if somebody comes by selling like wrapping paper and I'm like, oh, I want to help you, I'll buy it even if I don't care
Yeah.
about the wrapping paper. But you're like, no, I want you to like love the wines too. I want you to feel like you're almost like a part of the family, maybe is like something that brings people in.
That's what it is. I want people to, I feel like people, they might see a wine on a shelf and they're like, oh, that's an interesting label. And I see it's got 93 points. I'll buy that. There's people that do that.
Yeah.
my goal as we continue to get out there and tell our story is that people are like, oh, I know that brand. That brand stands for something. That's just not like a generic name. It is something that, oh man, they do things. They're the ones that help the women, and also the wine's really good. So
Yeah.
if I have a choice between like big name brand, and I'm not going to like call anybody out, but like big name brand, it's just a corporation. They don't do anything else but like make money for themselves. And then you've got this other brand where let's just say the quality is at least as good, if not better, and they do something really good for the world. Like, I think if you give the public a choice and price is like sort of close,
Yeah.
then they'll take the one that does the social good.
No, absolutely.
So that's sort of where we want to live as a brand.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Going back to just to get into a little bit of logistics for folks listening, because I do have, I mean, it's a primarily a female audience, but shout out to all the guys listening too. We do a little bit of both. But tell us a little bit about for the foundation, who can apply for it? How can they apply? How does it work? Can you go a little bit just into the kind of like details of it?
Sure. So we open up a grant cycle on our website. We're actually in the process of discussing now if we're going to split the cycle into twice a year versus once a year. So, we may change that. Right now, we're on a once a year cycle, and, grants open up, at some point in mid-February and they close in June, and people can apply on the website. They basically tell us who they are and what they do, and they submit a video telling us how they'd utilize the funds. And, then we go in and we choose folks. Typically around October is when we give out the grants.
Okay.
So that's sort of how the process works. And we've had, each year it gets bigger. I think we had 70 something submissions last year, which, again, is as a kind of startup thing, I
Yeah.
was really happy with, and to see some of our businesses really, continue to thrive and be successful is a wonderful thing. And my goal was to really create a community between the businesses as well. So they support each other
Yeah.
and help out each other. And hey, listen, I had this, finance or this accounting thing. Do you have anybody I could talk to? And like they sort of have conversations and dialogue amongst themselves as sort of alumni of our program, which, to me, I think is really cool as well. And I feel like building that support network of other female entrepreneurs is a good thing because that's something my mom would have loved to have, but didn't have it at the time where she was building her business.
Yeah, that's been monumental for me in growing a business and having people to just like, your friends kind of get it, but it's not the same thing as being able to talk to other business owners and other entrepreneurs about everything that's going on and what you can learn along the way. So I think that's so the community aspect is valuable as well. And I'm curious, going back to like, as you're creating this and thinking about this, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently in starting the DD project and creating the foundation?
One thing I tell people all the time is you don't realize how hard it is to sell wine until you sell wine.
Yeah.
So maybe I would have sold olive oil or something instead, because it is competitive and it's really hard. And especially when you get into distribution and the regulations of every state, and it's just they make it hard. They make it harder than it has to be. Welcome to dealing with government.
Right.
But, it very challenging, very competitive. It's creating brand awareness is a challenge. I thought stupidly that it would be much easier to get our message out there than it actually is. As people who really, I feel like, have something to say and are doing things the right way, it's still really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I might have second guessed my choice, not because I don't love wine, just because it's incredibly challenging. But the train has left the station. I'm 100% in, and doing things like this, and you know, having conversations with a wider audience. That's how we can get our message out there, and that's kind of what I have to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've definitely most winemakers I talk to, they're like, actually the hardest part of being a winemaker is selling the wine. Like it's hard to make a wine, a good wine. But it makes total sense because when you think about it, like even just at like if you're in a state that can sell wine at a grocery store, right? And you just or
Right.
even just like imagine walking into your Total Wine, like, but at a grocery store, which section of the store has hundreds of options? Like, I guess there's a pretty long aisle for bread, but other than that, like it is not the same as it is with wine when you're like, you're choosing between so many options. And like you said, nobody really knows how to choose. Like you kind of just look for a cute label if you don't know anything about wine, which is totally understandable. And it's like, how do you stand out? And how do you tell people like this isn't just a bottle of wine, this is a bottle of wine that does good, you know, and like you said,
Right.
you need to share that messaging more than anything.
Yeah. And it's also, people want, our distributors are like, when are you going to get a review? I wish it was that easy. Like if I could call James Suckling and just say, hey man, person to person, it'd be really good for our brand if you would review it. Do you think you can make that happen? Like, and if I could will that to happen, I would. If he's listening, if he ever tunes in, that'd be awesome. I would love that. He's gonna love the wine. I could put a great review out there.
We'll see what we can do. We'll kind of push it. We did the person just before you, Natalie McLean. But she's from Canada, so it might be a little harder. But she might be able to get a hand on your wine. We can pass it along to her and get some reviews going.
But that's those are the things that people care about.
Yeah,
The reviews are important.
yeah,
That's for a lot of people, as you mentioned, a cute label or whatever it is. It's like people they need a reason to pick up the bottle. So okay, you got a great label. There's a little call to action that shows a review or some sort of quote from somebody or whatever the store is, like it's their selection. There's gotta be some reason for somebody to take a shot if they don't know the brand.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the wines that you make as part of the DD Project label. So, you want to tell us a little bit about, I know you don't have to go through the whole selection because I know that you've actually expanded quite a bit from that first Pinot Grigio. But tell us a little bit about how you make, maybe how you decide which wines to make and what that process kind of looks like. This podcast is sponsored by Repour Wine Savers. Listen, I love wine, but that doesn't mean I want to drink a full bottle every night. You see, it's always a risk opening a bottle knowing I'll only have a glass or two. But now I don't worry about that at all because I have Repour. These little contraptions will keep your open bottles of wine good for up to 3 months by removing oxygen from the bottle using fancy chemistry. And they're so easy to use. I simply open a bottle of wine, cork or screw cap, just like normal, and enjoy my glass or two. Then, when I'm ready to call it a night, I rip the foil off my Repour wine saver and place it in the bottle in place of the cork or screw cap, and then stick the bottle in the fridge. Simple as that. Then, whenever I grab another glass from that bottle in the future, I just make sure to put the Repour back on as soon as I'm done pouring. It's that easy. Want to give Repour a try? Head to repour.com, REPOUR.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ for 10% off your order. That's Repour, REPOUR.com, and use code CORKANDFIZZ. No spaces in that, and the and is spelt out. So it's CORKANDFIZZ. Once you have Repour, you'll never have to worry about opening a bottle of wine just for one glass. I mean, heck, now you can try 2 or more wines at the same time and have your own at-home wine tasting. This podcast is sponsored by the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club. Interested in trying new wines, but not sure where to start? Or maybe you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you love the idea of tasting wine live with me. If that's you, come join my Cork Crew Virtual Wine Club, and you'll get to sip wine with me twice a month while I help you find new favorite wines. The Cork Crew is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. And the best part about this club, purchasing the wine is completely optional. Plus, all events are recorded, and you have access to the full library of recordings as a Cork Crew member, so you can always catch up if you can't make it live. Oh, and did I mention it's virtual, which means you get to do all of this from the comfort of your sofa in your PJs. No need to worry about driving in crappy traffic, finding a designated driver, or spending an arm and a leg on a taxi. Want to give it a try without the commitment? You're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Cork Crew Virtual Wine Tasting Club. With this pass, you'll be able to join a Cork Crew event of your choosing. No strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for anything. You'll be my guest. Simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get your class pass and be one step closer to becoming a member of the best wine tasting club around, the Cork Crew. I can't wait to see you there. Now let's get back to the show.
Sure. Yeah, I think, for me, it is a combination. It's wines I like to drink, and it's also wines that I think will be commercially successful. It's also wines that, you know, I can, acquire in whatever fashion we acquire them, and they're extremely high quality. So the second wine we did was Cabernet, and we were able to make an Oakville Cabernet. And I was like, listen, like this is the heartland of cab country. And I had a friend who's a winemaker say, hey, listen, this is really, really good. And I think you're going to love it. I just want you to try it. And this was probably the only wine that we made where I didn't try 10 different wines. As soon as I had this, I was like, oh my God, yes,
Yeah.
this is our Cabernet. I don't need to do anything else. Don't touch it. Don't do a thing to it. It's perfect. And that was the 2019 Oakville cab, which is our first one. And I think I still have a case left. We sold all of it. And I'm going to sit on that case myself and kind of drink it periodically throughout the years. But it's wonderful. And we've made two other vintages of the cab since then. And I'm extremely proud of that. It's not cheap. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and you're saying not cheap. I mean, I looked on your website. I don't think the prices are like crazy when you're thinking like California, like small batch wine, right? So like, do you know offhand? I'm like trying to think. I don't have the website up. What
The
the
cab's 99.
Okay, okay. That's not like,
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're like adding the do good aspect to it. Like I've definitely paid that much for a California Cabernet.
Yeah. And honestly, and I'm sure you notice this too, everybody's pricing their cabs $125, $150. And there's, again, I won't name names, but there's definitely people selling $150 Cabernets. And I'm like, this is not a $150 Cabernet. It's just not.
Yeah.
If I'm paying $150 a bottle, and I've paid $250 a bottle for some things before too. And I'm like, it better be screaming good.
Right. It better like knock my socks off.
Absolutely. So I take that into account. If I'm going to ask somebody to pay $100 for a bottle of wine, it better be really, really good.
Yeah.
And it is. And every vintage is unique, and that's been fun on the cab side. We also make a Grenache, which we've done two different vintages of, which I think is a really, under discussed, varietal. I love Grenache. I think it pairs really well with so many different things. So we've really enjoyed pouring that at tastings, introducing that to people. I think people are like, "Oh, wasn't familiar with this, but I really like this,"
Yeah.
So
Where do you source the Grenache from?
it's a California appellation is California, but it's sourced from 5 different vineyards.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So it was really something where the winemaker was like, listen, I'm going to pull something from all of my favorite vineyards and I'm going to put this together. And that's what this is.
Yeah.
I think just the flavor profile on both the vintages that we've made, I think they're unique and special and great. I'm thrilled with it.
Would you call, so now Grenache to me tends to go two different ways. It's either like similar to a Pinot Noir and it's lighter, a lot of fruit and some of that earthiness, or it starts to go, like, in my opinion, kind of towards Zinfandel, where it's more of a fruit bomb. Nothing bad. I don't say that in a bad way. Sometimes people think that means bad, but I mean like intense flavor, a little more body to it. How would you describe where your Grenache fits?
I would definitely say we're closer to the Pinot
Okay.
realm. It definitely drinks. That's sort of, if I'm articulating it to somebody that doesn't know Grenache, I will take them down the Pinot path and I'll say,
Yeah.
listen, you know, do you like Pinot Noirs? Do you like certain flavor profiles of certain Pinot Noirs? If you do, then you should take a shot on this because I think you'll really like this. And especially before we had made a Pinot Noir, that was the wine I really drove Pinot Noir fans towards.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What else you got?
So we made our first Chardonnay this year.
Ooh, okay. California Chardonnay. It's a big big topic.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is, and again, art versus commerce, I didn't make enough. We blew out.
Really?
Yes, and I think that was fun for me. It was the first wine that sold that quickly. And that was cool because I was like, oh man, hindsight being what it is, man, I should have made another 50 cases. And because when you're donating all the money, and I'm sure you've talked to people who are in wine, cash flow in wine is a thing that you really have to pay attention to as well. Because as soon as you're buying your grapes or you're buying your bulk, and then you're bottling and you're putting it up D2C or you're putting it into distribution, you're waiting to get paid. As soon as you get paid, you've got to then take that money and you got to buy the next year's, so it's
Yep.
continuously turning money, which is a challenge.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure adding to that like you guys, all of your profit is donated. So like you don't really have that like cash reserve where you're like, okay, we'll use this if we need to. It's more like we want to donate the profit. We got to keep the cycle going here for the running the winery.
Again, I should have thought through this better.
Not have just one. Yeah. Selling wine. Yeah. The business of wine is crazy. I truly believe in the saying where it's like, do you want to know how you make a small fortune in wine? You start with a large fortune because it's just so hard to make money in the wine world.
Why do you think a lot of the people that, wind up getting into wine in their 40s and 50s made money in other industries?
Right?
They were running Disney or they were running, Fortune 500 companies. And then, oh, let's buy a winery. Because at that point, you've got enough money where it's like, hey, if it just breaks even,
That's
cool.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a winery and my friends can come hang out.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, okay, so I think you guys also have a rosé, right?
Mhm.
From
Yes.
out of the line. Is that still available?
Yes. Rosé of Cabernet. We still have that as well, which is a lot of fun. And I think, I'm a rosé all year kind of
Oh
guy.
yeah.
So not just a summer situation. So yeah, I love our rosé. This is fourth vintage of rosé we've
Okay.
done, which is cool.
And you said the Pinot Grigio is coming soon. The like
Pinot
this is
Grigio
only
is
the
coming
second
soon.
vintage that you've
Yeah.
done.
Yes,
Cool.
second vintage, and then we did a really unique white wine blend, which we did Chardonnay Chenin Blanc
Ooh.
blend, which was really fun. And honestly, we had people that just said they didn't drink white wine and loved this wine. It had a really unique flavor profile. In a lot of ways, if I had to describe it, I think it really drank like a Sauvignon Blanc.
Ah, that like more crisp, higher acidity kind of
Tropical
situation.
fruits. Like I felt like the flavor profile was more tropical fruit, like a Sauvignon Blanc would be,
Yeah.
and it's just a really unique wine.
Is that one still available on the website?
Gone.
Oh, you're killing me. You can't tell me about a Chenin Blanc blend and then tell me I can't buy it.
Last week I was talking to our one of our winemakers and I said, "Hey, can we make this again?" He's like, "Maybe." And I was like, "Listen, we have people that want this. I want to
Yeah.
make this again." Well, you got to talk to this guy and maybe we can get grapes from here and maybe we can do this. And I was like, can we just figure this out? Because, people are excited about it.
Yes, I'm like convinced. I'm trying to get like California to love Chenin Blanc again and like make more of it. There's a great winery out of Napa, Lola Wines. They make a phenomenal Chenin Blanc, but they can't, nobody else really makes it because it costs so much to have a vineyard of Chenin Blanc when you could make so much more money if you made it a Cabernet vineyard. And I'm like, oh, but it's so good. California makes good Chenin.
But, people are switching up that thinking a little bit because there's a lot of Cabernet grapes that are sitting on the market.
Yeah.
So I think people are, starting to plant some other stuff, which is not a bad thing.
No, I agree. I think it's a little more fun that way.
It really is. And then we are, I haven't even mentioned this yet. We're doing a Syrah, Petite Syrah blend as well that we'll have out probably in 2 months.
Okay.
So I'm super excited about that. That's going to be really fun.
Yeah. How would you describe the flavor profile on that one? I know Petite Syrah is kind of a newer grape for a lot of folks.
That I would say, if I had to describe what it drinks most like, I would say it definitely has a lot of similar profiles to our Cabernet
Okay.
and nice tobacco, nice spice blend to it. I would say probably more blue fruit,
Oh, okay.
but it's a beautiful wine, and I think it's something that people will really enjoy.
Yeah, no, that sounds delicious. So you talked a little bit about, in terms of making the wine, you either buy bulk wine from winemakers, and it sounds like it's multiple different winemakers, or you ferment them yourself. When you're fermenting yourself, do you work with the same winemaker, or how does that work?
So yeah, I mean, there's a few folks that we work with, and typically if we're fermenting, it's one winemaker that specifically will do it. And the fun part for me is just being involved in the process, whether we are, buying, and bulk sounds like a dirty word. Sometimes we're buying wine and then we're just labeling it under our brand versus the brand that it comes under.
Right. Well, and it matters like where you're buying it from too. I think that's like a good clarification. Like I think people hear bulk wine, they're like, oh, you're buying like whatever they made in the, Central
The
Valley of
leftover.
like what yeah, where it's like you're like, not trusting. It's like, no, this is different. This is like from it sounds like you really, you really search out the wine and the winemakers that is going to be good. And then those winemakers just either aren't making a label or it doesn't fit their label. And so they're looking to like give it to somebody else.
Well, no, or it is their label and they're just kind enough to give it to me.
Wow.
So I think that's probably an important point of clarification, is that
Yeah.
it's not leftover or something that they don't want. It's just like, hey, we'll do this for you and we'll give you X amount of gallons because we know you're doing something good for people with the wine. And, I can't talk about where I get it from because I would get it at a price that no one else would. So
Sure.
that's sort of the point of it. But it's, I like to tell people the quality of our wine is much higher than the price point, and that's by design. So, if you were buying our wine, if you were buying what's in the bottle under the actual label that it comes in under, you'd be paying a lot more.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's other wine brands that do this. There's or do something similar. There's a wine company called Claudine out of Napa as well, that does something similar where they're going in and they're buying really high-end labels wines, they're selling it under their label at a great price.
Yeah. Yeah. Wine people are just good people, I feel like that it doesn't surprise me at all that there are folks that are like, this is my amazing wine. I know you're doing a good thing. Here, I'd like to sell it to you. And I'm not going to put a huge price tag on it because I know you're going to send the product. Like, wine people are just such good people.
And we talked about cash flow too. It's
Yeah.
also, for, wine, and especially when you're
Oh,
real
sure.
volume, they can go in and say, all right, we can sell you a bunch of gallons. We know it's sold. Money comes in the door so they can finish doing what they need to do for their brands. So,
Yes. Oh, that makes a good point.
yeah. So
Interesting. Okay.
it's all cash flow for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people want to purchase your wine or support the foundation, how can they do that?
ddprojectwines.com.
Awesome. We'll send it. I'll put it in the show notes as well so folks can find that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you'd like to support the DD Project and try some of their delicious wines, you can visit their website, www.ddprojectwines.com. And if you'd like to learn more about David's production and management company, along with their live events, check out worksentertainment.com. I will have both of those links in the show notes for you. If you love this episode as much as I did, I'd love it if you could take a quick second, just rate it and leave a review, no matter which app you are on, whether it's Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You can leave a review or you can leave a rating. They're different each one, but if you could just say, hey, I'm listening to this and I really enjoyed it, that would really mean the world to me. And please share this with the other wine lovers in your life. Now, in next week's episode, you will learn more about David's connection between wine and music, how he believes wine can have a positive impact on the world, what's next for David and the DD Project, plus you'll discover the wine myth that bugs David the most. Thanks again for listening, and if you want to learn more about wine, come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And if you're interested in exploring new wines and joining an incredible community of wine lovers, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Head to thecorkcrew.com to learn more and use code WINE101 when signing up for the membership to get your first month free. Cheers!